This is a difficult time to actually give a talk just after lunch when either you are too full or your mind is somewhere else. But I was told that I have to do some dance or something like that to draw your attention. But I don't know much dancing and things like that, so I will start with my project, with my talk, and please, if you can, listen to me as much as you can. I think what I will talk about, although I thank the organizers for allowing me to come and give this talk here, but I'm trying to talk about one crop that I think is neglected quite a bit in Western Canada, which has very good potential. So instead of talking about performance and persistence of all forage crops, I will talk specifically about a crop that is very near and dear to me. It is sandfoin, and that's what I will be talking on. This talk, I would use some data that was generated by Dr. Bruce Coleman from University of Saskatchewan and Dr. Alan Iwasa, who is at the Swift Current Research and Development Center. And so that's why I think they are also my co-authors in this talk. This is a crop of sandfoin. Very good looking. If you can see, it has a very different color flower compared to alfalfa or canola or any other crop. And actually it looks beautiful. But other than just the looks of this, it also has very high quality and palatability. And that is why I think it is an excellent legume crop for our animals. One other very important thing this crop does is, if it is present, even at 15% level in an alfalfa stand, it can prevent bloat. No other crop can do that. That is the important part. I think you should take this, at least this, into your mind, that this is a crop that can prevent bloat if it is grown with alfalfa. But having all these good characteristics, why is it not as popular as it should be? That question probably you may have in your mind, but these are actually the reasons why it is not as important as it could be in Western Canada. First of all literature you can read about sandfoin indicates that sandfoin cannot produce as much biomass as alfalfa. Maximum people have received is about 75% of what an alfalfa crop can give them. And also, it cannot survive in mixed alfalfa stands. So how would you prevent bloat if it does not survive? That is what the old varieties did not do. It also did not grow back at the same rate as alfalfa. So after the first grazing, even if it was there in the first grazing, the stand becomes pure stand of alfalfa and animals bloat again. And then the last point is, had no tolerance for frequent cutting or grazing. Most of the alfalfa varieties we had in the past in Western Canada, or most of the sandfoin cultivars we had in the past in Western Canada, were single cut type. So that means it would give a good cut, but only one cut. After that, it does not grow back. So what I did, and I think if you wanted to see what the problem is, the bloat is just this. This is what happens when animals graze on alfalfa alone. And because of that, just the fear of it prevents people from using alfalfa for grazing. Just because it may cause bloat, not in all circumstances bloat is, you would observe bloat. In most cases you will probably observe bloat, but just the fear of it does not allow anybody to graze alfalfa when it is in good growing condition. But sandfoin alfalfa mixed stand will eliminate this possibility. And when you know that, I think we had to do something about it, because to be truthful, when I joined as alfalfa breeder in Saskatoon, I thought the big companies like Monsanto and Forage Genetics and all those are working on a bloat-free alfalfa. And when I did not see this variety come to the market about 10 years ago, I realized that maybe I'll try something different. And I knew that sandfoin can prevent bloat, so my interest was to develop sandfoin to prevent bloat. If you want to know what bloat is, in simple words, it is just fast release of soluble protein into rumen fluid upon grazing, alfalfa grazing. And this rumen fluid traps all the gases produced in the rumen when the animal is, when the protein is getting digested in the rumen, and that gas gets trapped in this frothy material, and eventually, under specific conditions, if it is let go for a long time, then the animal may die. But the condensed tannin containing forage legume, such as sandfoin, do not cause ruminant bloat. That is one thing I thought I should let you know before I say what my interest was, what my goal was in terms of sandfoin breeding. It was very simple. I did not want to go into the details of bloat. What I wanted to make sure is that the ability to survive with alfalfa stand is there and the regrowth is there. Of course, a breeder will not do anything other than looking into the forage yield also. When you are selecting for anything, you have to make sure that the producers would benefit from it, because no matter how tolerant the crop is, for example, lichens are the most drought-tolerant plant, but it grows only this big. Why would anybody grow that? So you have to have the biomass for the producers to grow. That's why breeders never neglect breeding for forage yield, no matter what they are trying to breed. So what we are trying to do is make the stand from this to this with sandfoin and alfalfa together. And for doing that, I took a small page out of the turf grass breeders. Turf grass breeders normally have a stand of grass or turf and then seed, transplant individual grasses of their interest into it so that they can keep on mowing. In this case, what I did, I had a stand of alfalfa. I transplanted sandfoin into that stand and did multiple cuts. I did not do anything for 3 years, just cut them 3-4 times per year so that I would select for plants that would have the ability to survive in alfalfa and also grow back. I was keeping note only on regrowth part. With that, using that technique, I have developed quite a few sandfoin populations that can survive in alfalfa and also regrow at the same time with alfalfa and produce relatively good biomass. But then, just by doing that, I can't say that I am successful, because you will be asking, prove us that you have achieved what you started with. So I will show you, as any research scientist, I will show you some data that indicates that yes, I have success in doing the forage yield part in this, because in pure stand, I wanted to show you that some of these two I have highlighted, 3519 and LRC 3902. LRC 3902 is the one that we have released as Mountain View sandfoin. And you can see that these two are actually yielding as high as AC Longview. and sometimes even slightly better than AC Longview, which is a high-yielding alfalfa variety. So that 75% theory is not true if you put some emphasis into selecting for high-yielding sainfoin. So my 2 points here, one is that some of them are yielding higher, and then also you should see, because this is a 3-cut system I was using there in Lethbridge. And this is only under rain-fed condition. Under irrigated condition, the yields are a little bit higher, but at the same time, they are also more or less close to what AC Longview would produce in our environment under 3-cut system. So my conclusion from this is some sainfoin populations produce as much biomass as alfalfa, not what the literature says that only about 75% it can produce. Second thing is what it does when it is grown with alfalfa. Grazeland is alfalfa. These are the 3-year average yields of sainfoin with grazeland alfalfa. You can see that the Nova grazeland is the lowest yielding. The newer populations are yielding better than Nova grazeland. And grazeland is there, Nova gets eliminated, so at least it would produce as much as grazeland. It would never, the mixture stand, even though there is no sainfoin, would not yield less than grazeland because alfalfa is always there. So that is the reason why you see this. And I would also try to indicate a little bit about if there is any interaction between sainfoin and alfalfa cultivars. In this test, I'm giving you some small examples of some of the, we have lot more tests going on to indicate this, but I just wanted to show you just 1 or 2 populations, this 3902, which has become Mountain View now, and 3519, which is also another very good population developed at Lethbridge. It was grown with Blue Jay, Grazeland, and Longview, just to see whether there is that variety interaction or not. And it shows that there is small interaction. In total yield, you won't see the interaction as much as if you see individual cuts. If you look at individual cuts, you will see the interaction is a lot more prominent. But my interest is to show you that yes, there is some kind of a choice you have to make. What variety of alfalfa you will use with what variety of sainfoin. And this is what I was talking about when I said that you have to see interaction. See Nova and Blue Jay, Grazeland, and Longview. The proportions are very, very low in terms of what sainfoin is. First cut is in green, second cut is in red. But if you look at Mountain View, this is what it is. See, in the first cut in the third production year, in the first cut and second cut, the proportion of sainfoin is much higher than what it would be in Nova and Grazeland. But these are just simulated grazing. It was not direct grazing. And I don't know whether I would have time for showing you the direct grazing. I'll show you direct grazing what happens too. And this is the other one, 3519, which also has very high proportion of sainfoin compared to alfalfa. So I think in general then one can say that the new populations are definitely better than the old variety Nova, number one. Number two, it also survives in mixed stands. This is what happened in Saskatoon. You can see the proportions of mixed stands are much, or the amount of forage produced in mixed stand is way above the production in pure stand. So there is probably some kind of synergistic effect of sainfoin and alfalfa growing together. So individually, sainfoin or alfalfa will not produce as much as when you have both together. This was a grazeland and sandfoin mixture. So you can see that Nova, if you consider Nova as 100%, everything is much higher. Of course, grazeland is very high. Even though Nova is not there in the Nova grazeland on the third year, after third year, but still it produces more because of presence of grazeland. And in terms of proportion, as I said, even in Saskatoon, the proportion of Nova was much lower compared to some of the new populations we have of sandfoin. And we also had this under swift current condition, where the condition was so dry, it did not grow back after the second cut, even under simulated grazing. Under direct grazing, it did not grow back after the first grazing. But under simulated grazing, at least it came back. But even there, of course, the differences were not noticed among new or old varieties. So if you don't have as much stress from the cutting, probably these varieties will not show any difference. So then, of course, I think generating data is one thing, but most people would like to see actually whether sandfoin and alfalfa in mixed stand are actually growing there. And this is an example of that. 3919 with long view, you can see in the third year, there are lots of sandfoin still there, whereas Nova and grazeland, there is no sandfoin. Another picture just to show you that this is 3902, which is the mountain view now. You can see some sandfoin there, but when it comes to Nova, there was no sandfoin. And Nova, as I said from the very beginning, is a single cut type plant. So after the first cut, Nova does not grow back. And as a consequence, alfalfa tries to choke it out. Although it may be there next year at a lower level, but only in the first cut you may see some Nova. Second cut or third cut, it just goes away. That is the reason why I suggest that we have to pay attention to the new populations. So I would summarize what I have said so far, and if we have a little bit of time, I will show you a little bit of data about direct grazing and bloat experiments. So I say newly developed sandfoin populations can produce higher biomass yield than existing cultivars, and some have produced as much yield as high-yielding alfalfa. We can also say that new sandfoin populations can stay in alfalfa pasture in higher proportions than Nova for 3 to 4 years, and the mixed stands out-yield pure alfalfa stands. Two more summaries from this. Higher proportion of new sandfoin populations in mixed alfalfa pasture help reduce bloat incidence and severity significantly. I haven't shown you any data. I promised you if I have time, I'll show you some of that data. In mixed alfalfa stands, new sandfoin populations produced high average daily gain and live weight gain without causing bloat in grazing cattle. Last 2 points, sandfoin cultivar improvement must continue to make this crop adapted to a wider area and thus more useful for the producers in Western Canada. Genetic improvement work in sandfoin was never as intensive as alfalfa in the past. More work on this crop may prove beneficial in the long run for Western Canada. I seriously believe the amount of emphasis you put on a crop is directly proportional to its usefulness in our area. Sandfoin was not worked on for many years. The last variety in Western Canada was produced in 70s. That was the Nova was the last variety. Now we have another variety called AC Mountain View. Probably this year on there would be seed available for this crop. So I think I have a little bit of time, right? Leanne? Okay. I'll show you, or I should say the acknowledgement first before I go there. Actually, my Sandfoin work started with a grant from Saskatchewan ADF, Ag Development Fund. Later on, Alberta Livestock and Meat Agency, Beef Cattle Research Council, and Alberta beef producers all contributed funds for our Sandfoin work. And it also, we received in-kind support of many other organizations and individuals to do the work I have described so far. Let me go into the bloat part a little bit. The pasture bloat observed in alfalfa Sandfoin mix stand at Lethbridge in 2010 and 2011. These were the proportions of alfalfa. We had two pastures, one with Nova, the other one was 3519. And you can see the first year we had, in the first, second, and third growth, we had 20, up to 25% or over 25% Sandfoin. But the second year, you had only 7 and 8% Nova. And in third year, you had only 5% Nova. Whereas in the other population, 3519, we had minimum of 28% in the pasture. So when you actually graze this stand, this is what you observe. When we had 28, 29% Sandfoin, you have very little bloat, and the intensity also is very low. It never crossed number 1 type bloat. Even in the second year, we had only one animal that bloated, that showed some sign of bloat. Regardless of where it was bloating anyway. But we had to mention this in this study. And that is the reason why I say there was 98% bloat reduction when we had more than 20% Sandfoin in the stand. 15 to 20% is the minimum when we had done feeding study to determine that, and this shows very clearly. But when you have more, only 5% Sandfoin, it does not prevent bloat. Most of the animals bloated. Okay? Then let me give you a little bit of data about their animal performance. When you have the similar things, we had all four populations of Sandfoin with AC Blue Jay alfalfa. In the first year, we didn't have grazing. We had just taken the yield. But in second and third year, we had grazing. And these were the biomass productivity of those stands in each of the 3 grazing periods. And when we look at animal performance, the average daily gain was no different among all the 3 populations. You can see all the 3 populations in each year were more or less similar. What that indicates is whether you have pure stand of alfalfa, 5%, or 28, 29%, the animal performance will not be any different. Only difference would be there would be no bloat in the populations where you have, or in the stand where you have more than 20% Sandfoin in it. Even the live weight gain is very good. I think alfalfa is considered the queen of forages because it produces the maximum. In terms of animal productivity, both milk and meat production is probably the best when you have alfalfa, or alfalfa only, if it is taken by animals. But at the same time, when you have alfalfa Sandfoin mix, there is no loss in your productivity. And who says if we improve Sandfoin even better, maybe you can even have higher productivity from alfalfa Sandfoin mixes. And the other important thing is Sandfoin has condensed tannin, which actually is binding to some of the protein in rumen, where it prevents all the digestibility of protein in rumen, and the digestibility happens in the lower gut. and that is considered bypass protein, which is a good thing for animal performance. So if it is making bypass protein and all that, my feeling is when people understand this aspect, probably they will be able to pay extra for a mixed stand for hay or for pasture. Okay? So that is all I would say. I think you can summarize this as under direct grazing, new sandfoin populations produce as much average daily gain or kilogram live weight gain per hectare as Nova when grown with alfalfa and mixed stand. The other conclusion would be new sandfoin populations when grown with alfalfa in mixed stands will produce high average daily gain and live gain weight without causing bloat in grazing cattle. That, if anything, that is quite valuable. At least it gives you the peace of mind that you don't worry about bloat in these stands. And that's where I will stop, and if you have any questions, I may try to address.
Ryan Beyerbach. I was just, have you looked at whether your new sandfoin variety holds its leaves or holds the feed value late into the fall any better than alfalfa, or how it compares for late season grazing?
Both sandfoin and Sicer milk veg would hold on to their leaves much longer than alfalfa. In a much mature stage, you will have more leaves in sandfoin and Sicer milk veg. That is as a rule.
Hi, just wondering, low pH soils, any comments on how sandfoin would do in comparison to alfalfa?
Low pH soil?
Yeah.
At this time, I don't have a comment about that. I am actually growing sandfoin under low pH condition. I think in a year or two, I would be able to tell you.
What would you consider low pH?
The pH is the soil I'm dealing with, or the soil where I have planted this, has about 4.5 pH.
Okay. Thank you.
Surya, I'm just wondering if you can comment on the benefits of sandfoin, say, compared to Sicer in mixtures. Like, how do those two compare? Sicer's non-bloating as well, and a lot of people are interested in it for mixtures.
I know that, and I think I don't have direct comparison to give you at this stage. But what I have at present a study where we're trying to see what would be better to rejuvenate an old pasture, old alfalfa pasture, what would be best in that scenario to use as a legume crop, which not only would make the stand more productive, but also can reduce bloat in it. But I think hold your breath for a while. I think in 2 years' time, we will have some data to present to you. But when it comes to establishing a stand, sandfoin and alfalfa stand can be grown much more rapidly compared to sandfoin and Sicer milk veg would be.
Thank you for the presentation. Please, as sandfoin being grown with grasses, let's say with Russian red rye or hybrid brown grass, compared to alfalfa with hybrid brown grass?
Yeah, well, I have to say that I don't have direct knowledge, direct data to support or say anything about it, but we are actually in the process of generating some information with the help of, I think, our friends here in WBDC, and Alan Ivasa also is looking into some of that. We are cooperating with them, and hopefully in some time, in 2 years' time, we will be able to answer some of those questions.
Have you looked at what the optimal time is to cut sandfoin for hay production?
It is the same as in alfalfa. If you go at 10% bloom, that's the right stage to get the maximum quality without losing biomass productivity.
from what I've seen, it looks like Sandfoin blooms a little earlier than alfalfa. Is that normal with?
That's normal. Alfalfa is about Sandfoin is about 2 weeks earlier than alfalfa. So if you want to maximize the alfalfa production, you may have to wait until alfalfa is about 5% bloom when you graze the stand. You don't graze too much before that, then the alfalfa is very, very young, and I think you don't get the biomass productivity from that stand.
And we have time for one more, and that'll the last one.
Hello, Neil McLeod. Have you done any work with these mixtures beyond 4 years?
No, this is very interesting. When you do something like this, it opens up other opportunities, and that's why, although the stand was established in 2008, all these pastures were established in 2008. What we did last year in 2015, we started, because some of those pastures where Nova was became pure stand of alfalfa. That allowed us to look at what we can use to rejuvenate those pastures, number one. Number two, to make them bloat free again. That's why we are reseeding into these pastures Sandfoin and Sicer milk veg with different types of seeding equipment and with different seeding rates and all those other combinations. But you have to wait for a little bit longer for us to give some comments about it.
Are you suggesting then that after 3-4 years, the Sandfoin's not there anymore?
No, there are some populations where Sandfoin is still there after 6 years, but not in all combinations.